Hey guys, hope everyone's doing good, having a good start to the new year I hope. I've kind of switched gears from the gear drive install. What I'm doing is I'm moving the, working on the rear suspension, and I'm moving the leaf springs inboard of the frame rails. And I thought it'd be a cool video because there's not really a lot of videos out there to show you how to do this. Not that a lot of people probably do this. Anyways, I thought it'd be a cool video. I'm also adding leaf spring sliders, and same thing, there's not a lot of videos or any info on that stuff. So I thought I'd kind of put together what I'm doing and the little information that I do know, share it with you guys. So the reason for doing this is so I can get a bigger tire into the car. Usually the original leaf spring comes through right here. It actually overhangs into the wheelhouse. My car has DSC mini tubs, but the limiting factor on tire size was actually the leaf spring. I'm hoping by moving it in, I can sneak a 10.5W tire into the car. So this is the original front leaf spring mount on the Camaro. Basically what I've done is I've made new mounts. I used a 4-inch square tubing, and I just cut one side off it to open it up. I made it taller so that I can adjust the ride height, and I made these 1/8-inch thick doubler plates just to reinforce it and make it look cool. So basically how I located it was I used threaded rod and went from the original mounting holes through the new ones. I actually had some long thread rod when I did this, went all the way across to the other side. And then I made the threaded rod parallel with the main hoop in the car or the chassis. Just because these spring buckets are actually adjustable, you can slide them forward or backwards about 3/8 of an inch or so. So that's how I squared everything up. I ended up using this ladder bar cross member, and I welded that to inside the frame rails. It's got a nice kick down, kind of clears the drive shaft. And then I notched or hole sawed my, my new spring mounts and kind of inset them into the cross member. So that's how the bottom is going to be all tied in. And this is inside the car, so I actually made them pretty tall because I want to be able to adjust the ride height without using lowering blocks on the car. I had to cut the floor out, basically raise them up into the floor. It actually worked out nicely because it kind of ties into this reinforcement plate in the floor. So I'm going to weld it to there. And then I'm also going to make another, like a bulkhead kind of comes out over top of the new spring mounts, kicks back over, ties into the main hoop, and then I'll put a couple of like kicker bars up to my crossbar here so that these things are super stout. I think they'd probably be okay with just the ladder bar cross member. I don't want to take any chances. I don't want this thing moving around. I'm only going to throw more power at this thing, so I want it, like I say, super stout. Okay, at the back, you can see this is what you usually use to move the leaves over, but in my case it just wasn't enough. Just offset rear shackles. So these are the leaf sliders I'm going to put in, and like I say, for the front I made it adjustable so I can adjust the ride height, and whatever you do to the front you want to do to the back. So if I raise the front up 2 inches, I want to raise the back up 2 inches. I'm kind of guessing where the car is going to need to be because I've changed everything around, so I don't exactly know where the ride height is going to be, but I know I want the car low. I have a rough idea that I'm going to need about 3 inches of drop to get it where I want it. So I've set this up so that this new spring bolt is going to be 3 inches higher than the original spring mounting bolt hole. And then if it does end up coming down more, I'm just going to make, if it's got to come down an inch, I'll make an inch spacer. So I can just space this down an inch. And at the front will be easy, I'll just move down a hole. As far as mounting the rear sliders, every car is probably going to be a little bit different depending on what you have back there already to tie into or what you have in the way. In my case, the fuel cell was in the way, the ice water tank was in the way. I'll show you what I did. I had this tray built before, and that's what held my fuel cell, my ice water tank, and my battery. And the shackle wanted to be right where the sump of the fuel cell was, of course. So I've got to rearrange all that stuff, but basically what I did was I just hole sawed out part of the mount, and then I made this tube to go across, ties into my front cross member here, and ties into the rear cross member of the chassis. And then I just made this mounting plate and a little short piece of tubing to attach it. And then I'm going to make kind of some gussets or some fillers. If I get to that, I'll show you guys, just to tie it all in. And then basically I did the same on the other side. It's like exactly the same. So I wanted to tell you guys about mounting the sliders. What you want is the slider aimed downward at the front like this. 5 degrees downward from the chassis. So that's where I set my mounts and everything up when I was building them. So they're aimed 5 degrees down. The other thing you want to do when you mount these sliders is you want to set up so that all the weight of the car is on the springs. So I had jacked it up and put the stands underneath the springs. And what that does is, as the leaves flatten out, this bolt moves backwards. So you want to make sure that it's not going to bottom out or anything. And you want to set it up, because you can mount this slider anywhere, right? So you want to set it up so that your bolt hole is 1/3 of the way from the back. So it ends up being about here with all the weight of the car on it. And that way when the car launches and the leaves separate, the bolt hole, or the bolt, has lots of room to move, because you don't want that thing bottoming out when you're launching the car. And so you can see, this is where the spring used to be. This is where it is now. So it moved in, I think it was about 6 inches or so. But now I got tons of room. The spring will not be in my way now for mounting, or for putting a bigger tire in the car. And yeah, just keep in mind you got to do other stuff, like the perch on the axle is going to need to be relocated, so I got to do that. And I think my shocks are going to need to be relocated too, but just stuff to keep in mind when you're doing this. So that's basically how I did it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. And once I get it all done, I'll make another video just showing it all together and how I finished everything off and closed everything up. But yeah, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Have a good one.